Masechet Nedarim, Daf Nun Tet, in which we complete the 7th perek. We're going to tie up some loose ends regarding this question that Yishmael asked 2 dafim ago, as a long sugya about this subject, about an onion that was from Sheviit and then you replanted and grew more in the 8th year. And he wanted to know whether the new can nullify the old, and we concluded that yes, in fact, the new growth can nullify the old growth only regarding Sheviit, because it was the ground that made it prohibited, and now the ground can make it permitted again, and so that the old Sheviit original bulb will become nullified, and now considered non-Sheviit, will not have Kedushat Sheviit. All right, we brought altogether 7 proofs, so that's really good, because we always often see the number 7. And at the end of the daf yesterday, we had a challenge to 2 and 3, Rabbi Yohanan and Rabbi Yonatan. On this daf, we're going to focus on number 4, Rabbi Ami, who quoted Rabbi Yohanan as a proof that new growth can nullify the old growth. This was a case of onions that you already took maaser from the onions, and then you replanted them, and now they grow more. And the law there is that you have to take maaser again. In other words, the new growth needs maaser, and now that nullifies the old growth. Now, originally we rejected that because that's actually a stringency, that the new growth, because it's new and now needs maaser, is going to apply the stringency of the new growth to the old growth. The old growth loses its status of fixed kosher produce that is already mitukan, because the new growth comes and makes it back into tevel. Okay, that was the proof, and then we're going to have one challenge and then yet another challenge. The first one is going to be from our Mishnah. The second one will be from actually the source that we quoted in number 6 here. So here is the question from the Mishnah. Mativ Rami bar Chama. Kunam perot ha'elu alai, kunam hen alpi, kunam hen lefi, asur bechilufehen ubigidulehen. So all the way back to the Mishnah, 3 dapim ago. If a person says this produce is prohibited to me, like a korban, or they're permitted on my mouth or to my mouth, so this is a more general formula, and therefore the item itself is prohibited, like hekdesh, and therefore even something that I replace it with or something that grows from it is also going to be prohibited. Shani ochel v'shani toim mutar. But if I only prohibit myself from eating this produce, well then that's more limited, and so I just can't eat it. But since the entirety, the essence of it, I'm not prohibiting, therefore I would be permitted to eat the what I exchange it for and that which grows from it. But there's a limitation on this permission. Only if it's something that when I plant it, it decays entirely and there's nothing left of the original. In that case, what grows from it is permitted to eat. But if it's something that the seed does not decay, like an onion bulb, in that case, even though I only said I'm not going to eat it, nevertheless, that which grows from it, and even the gross of the growth. So I take an onion, and I say, I make a vow that I'm not going to eat it. I plant it, and that grows more onions. I take one of those and plant it, and it grows. Even that would be prohibited, because that is still part of the original item, is still going to be there. It just grew more, so it did not decay. And so what do we see from here? That new growth does not nullify old growth. In fact, the opposite. The new growth is prohibited, just like the original. So here, the original had a vow on it, and the vow, even though now it grows, and even that grows, the vow continues, and the new, because it remains prohibited like the original growth. This is the opposite of Rabbi Ami, who, remember, said that if I take onions, and these were kosher onions, because I already took maaser, and I plant them, then the new things that grow are tebel, and I have to take maaser, meaning the new is different from the old. If I would apply that to this case, then it should be that the new growth, the new growth should be permitted from the vow because we consider it like a new status. So what's going on here? Okay, the Rabbi Abba explains, vows are different from other laws because a vow, you can undo it. You can go to a rabbi and say, I made this vow, can you undo the vow for me? If the rabbi sees fit, he will undo the vow. And therefore, a vow is like something that will be permitted. And we already saw the principle yesterday that if you just wait or do something, most of the cases where you just wait a while and then it will become permitted, well then you don't say it's batel berov. Why should we rely on nullification when you can just wait, right? You have some chadash, just wait till you bring the omer and then it will be permitted. And so to here, we're not going to do bitul. We see here, remember yesterday, we also made a comparison between new growths, and the new growth is more than the old growth, and bitul, and ta'arovet, of something prohibited falling into a mixture. So this rule was originally said by mixture. If something is going to be permitted, if you just wait, then we don't rely on nullification by the mixture. We're applying that here also for new growth. So the new growth, the way it works is a new growth should nullify the old growth. So now we're making a distinction. Rabbi Ami, he was talking about maaser. Maaser is something that will never, terumah, taking terumah and maaser, is something that once it's prohibited, it's always going to be prohibited because it's davar she'en lo matirin. So we apply bitul, and so the new growth. Well, here it's for stringency, but nevertheless, the new growth is going to have a new status, whereas the vow is davar she'yesh lo matirin. So therefore, what, you have a problem? Just go to the chacham and undo the vow, and so therefore we're not going to use bitul for a vow. Our next question is Vahere Terumah Mitshil Allah Ubatle Berov. Hold on, Terumah also. That's Rabbi Ami's case, it's Terumah Maaser. I also can go and undo it. If I separate some Terumah from produce and then I change my mind and you say, you know what? I didn't want to take this part of it as Terumah Maaser. I want to give something else to the Kohen, to the Levi. Then I can undo, or I can go to the Chacham and say, I want to undo my designation of Terumah, and he will undo it. So therefore, Terumah and Maaser should be the same as a vow. And in both cases, the new should overpower and nullify the old. How do you know you can do that? And how do you know that's true? Ditnan se'at terumah teme'ah shenafla lepachot mime'ah cholin terakev haleme'ah ta'aleh. We have a Mishnah in Terumot that says that if one se'ah of terumah that's tameh falls into less than 100 of cholin, then the whole thing has to rot. Because it's terumah, no non-kohen can eat it. Now, because it became teme'ah, even the kohen can't eat it. So terumah teme'ah is not kosher for anybody. It falls into cholin, so now the whole thing, there's a big problem. If it's less than 100, you have to just let it rot. What do we see from here? What if it was 100 or more? Haleme'ah ta'aleh. If this prohibited terumah teme'ah falls into 100 or more, then it does become permitted. We see from here that regarding terumah and maaser, there is bitul, right? That was the case of Rabbi Ami in the name of Rabbi Yohanan, who said that when you plant the maaser, the new growth, you plant something that you already took maaser, the new growth requires maaser. So you see the new overpowers the old, nullifies the old. And here also in this Mishnah, we see that there is nullification regarding terumah, even though you can undo it. And so now we bring the question back regarding our Mishnah that's talking about vows, and there we said there's no bitul. What I planted was prohibited with a vow, and the new growth remains prohibited. The new growth continues what the original growth was, the original object of the vow. And so now we have the question. So we come back to our question: how come in the Mishnah regarding vows there's no bitul, and in the case of terumah maaser there is bitul, and so you can't tell me that it's because I can undo vows. I can also undo terumah and maaser. All right, so we're going to answer. Amri b'terumah b'yad kohen askina andela maseh michiel ala. Oh, must be here where we're talking about terumah that can be nullified. It's not. It's talking about a specific case where the terumah is already in the hands of the kohen. You see, if I'm a Yisrael and I take terumah, and as long as I still have it in my hands, then I can go to a chacham and change my mind. But if I already gave it to a kohen, then I'm no longer able to change my mind. So that's why we're talking about a case where I already gave it to a kohen, and that's why it's davar she'en lo matirin. There's no way I can undo it. And that's why it does become nullified. That's the difference. Wait, that doesn't make sense here in this Mishnah. The continuation of the Mishnah says, if it's terumah tehora, terumah that's edible for a kohen, that falls into chulin, in that case, I should sell the whole thing to a kohen, because the kohen can eat, after all, the entirety. Since it's terumah tehora and chulin, that's tahor, so the kohen can eat the whole thing. So there I wouldn't say, there I don't have to wait till it gets rotten, I can sell it. So we see that it's still in my hands in this case, right? Because I'm selling it to the kohen. So you can't tell me it's a case where I already gave it to the kohen. So therefore I should still be able to undo it. Oh, rather we're talking not about Yisrael who had produce and he separated the terumah himself, but rather a Yisrael whose mother is a bat kohen, and his mother's father had some terumah, and then he died and was given as inheritance, or he gave it as a present to this grandson who is a Yisrael. And so now the grandson actually owns the terumah. He can't eat it, he has to give it to a kohen, but actually he can sell it to a kohen for its value, because he actually owns the terumah. And this is talking about a case. So this is a case where this Yisrael cannot undo it because he is not the one that separated it in the first place. It's already terumah. There's no way to undo it. That's what we're talking about. But that can't be either, because the continuation of that very same Mishnah, we keep revealing just a little bit of the Mishnah so that you keep asking a question and then we can reject it. It says that if you sell it to a kohen, then you sell it, or all of it, except for that very se'ah. Meaning, if I had separated some terumah and now it falls into 100, altogether is 101. I can sell it to a kohen, but let's say there's $1 for a se'ah. I can only sell it to him for $100. I can't charge him 101 because one of the se'ahs in there is terumah that I separated, and therefore below I have to give to the kohen for free. I can't sell him terumah. I have to give to him for free. Therefore it's only 100. So you see here, it must be a case where I'm the one that actually separated it. If I received it as a gift or inheritance from my grandfather, happens to be my mother's father is in fact a kohen. So if I had received it from my grandfather as a gift, then I would be able to sell it to a kohen because I received it as a gift. It's actually my property, although I can't eat it because I'm not a kohen as terumah. I would be able to sell him all to charge him 101, and therefore it can't be a case where I inherit it. It has to be a case where I myself removed the terumah, and therefore I should be able to undo it myself. Ela ema bishlama kunamot misvad itchule alehen mishum de Rabbi Yonatan. Amar Rabbi Yonatan kol hanoder kilu bana bama v'amekayemo kilu maktir aleha teruma mai mitzvad itchule ala. So in fact, we forget that everything that we just said. Regarding the terumah, that it wasn't mine, or that I got it from my grandfather. So no, we're talking about terumah that really I could undo its status. Nevertheless, there is still a difference between vows and terumah, even though you can undo both, because vows, there's a mitzvah to undo a vow. As Rabbi Yonatan said, we already saw the statement of Rabbi Yonatan, who said, anyone who makes a vow, it's like you build an unauthorized altar outside the temple. And if you fulfill the vow, and don't undo it, it's even worse. It's like you made a ketoret and avodah zara ketoret. Why is Rabbi Yonatan so harsh against vows? Because he feels like vows are similar to a bama. Just like the Torah gave us a commandment. You can bring sacrifices and ketoret in one place, on the mizbeach. That's it. If you add to it, you think you're doing a good thing. Oh, I'm going to bring more ketoret, more sacrifices. I'm going to bring it in my backyard. Sounds like a good thing, but it's not. That is a serious prohibition. So too regarding mitzvot. Hashem gave us a lot of mitzvot. We should keep those. You're going and you think you're doing a good thing by adding more obligations and prohibitions upon yourself through a vow. No, that's no good. That's Rabbi Yonatan says that is like a bama. It's like making a ketoret on a bama. Therefore, it's a mitzvah to go and undo it. Whereas regarding terumah, there's no mitzvah to go undo terumah. All right, I separated terumah. The best thing is go give it to a kohen. Why would you have to go go and undo it? Since there's no mitzvah to separate terumah, therefore we consider terumah like davar she and lo matirin. It's terumah forever. And that's why if it falls into something else, we say batel. And if I plant it and it grows, we say batel. Whereas, and that's the statement of Rabbi Ami in the name of Rabbi Yohanan. Whereas our Mishnah, which is talking about vows, that's a completely different story. Vows, you should go and undo it. So therefore we consider it a davar she yesh lo matirin, because it's davar she, it's because something that will become undone, will become permitted. Therefore, we do not apply bitul, and that's why in our Mishnah, the growths of something that was prohibited by a vow also are prohibited, even if the growths are more than the original. Nevertheless, it remains prohibited. Okay, good. So we had that challenge to the Rabbi Ami from our Mishnah, and we may have said there's a difference because it can become permitted, and so therefore no nullification. What about terumah? No, you can undo terumah, but there's no misvah to undo terumah. There is a misvah to undo vows, and that is the difference between them. Okay, now we're going to further challenge number 4, the Rabbi Ami named Rabbi Yohanan, but this time we're going to challenge it from the statement here in number 6. So here we go. Gufa. Amar Rabbi Yohanan, this was Rabbi Ami, said Rabbi Yohanan, Litra besalim shetikena uzra'a mitaseret lefi chulaha. I had some onions and I took terumah and maaser from them. So now they're kosher onions. I replant them and now they have further growth. I have to bring maaser for the entire crop. Right, even for the part that I planted, I have to bring maaser, and it grows more. And now I uproot it, and there's some of the original that was kosher, and some new growth that is tebel. I have to bring terumah maaser for the entire amount. Okay, now Yatev Rabba v'kamar l'hashmata. Rabba was repeating what Rabbi Yohanan had said. Amar le Rav Chisda, man sa'it lach Rabbi Yohanan Rabbach. Rav Chisda tells Rabba, who is going to pay attention to you and Rabbi Yohanan, your teacher? Right? In other words, I don't like the statement that you are repeating in the name of Rabbi Yohanan. This is interesting that it calls Rabbi Yohanan the teacher of Rabba, even though we don't see anywhere that Rabba is third generation in Bavel. Rabbi Yohanan is second generation in Eretz Yisrael. So they did overlap in their lives, but we never see that Rabba went from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael to study with Rabbi Yohanan. Rabba did have some brothers who encouraged him, hey, come and study with Rabbi Yohanan. But from the end of that story, it never says he actually did. Maybe this would be a proof that he did, in fact, go at some point and study with Rabbi Yohanan. Or maybe he just received a lot of the traditions from Rabbi Yohanan, and that's why he calls him, your teacher, Rabbi Yohanan. Okay, either way, Rav Chisda is challenging Rabbah. Here's his challenge. Hetesha behen lechan halach, the permitted part of it. Where did it go? If I had, 1 liter of onions that are kosher, because I already took terumah maaser, I plant them and they grow 9 more. Okay, I understand. I have to take terumah and maaser from the 9 more. But why should I have to take from all 10? After all, the original bulbs are permitted. So what happened to that permitted? They went away? They went in the air? אמר לה, מי לתנן דכבתה בשרים שירדו עליהן גשמים ושמחו. So Rabbah answers Rav Chisda, wait a second, we have a Mishnah, one that we already saw in the statement number 6. This is it. If I have some onions that are from the 6th year, and now, so they're permitted, and now rain falls on them in the 7th year. I just put them out. I didn't replant them. I just put them out on the ground for storage, right? Or even I put them in the ground, but I did it for storage, not for the purpose of replanting. But it happened to be that it rained. Maybe I didn't expect it to rain, and they now sprouted new ones, right? So again, these things are prohibited, but they're permitted because from the 6th year, and now the new growth is going to be Sheviit. Im hayu alin shelahen shechorin asurin horiku mutarin. If the leaves that grow are black, we said that means dark green. Well, then you know they're fresh, new leaves from Sheviit. In that case, asurin. Right now, we're assuming that asurin means the original bulb and the new growths are all prohibited. Horiku mutarin, if they're light green, then that's permitted because that means just withered away and it's from the original, which is permitted. And so now Rabbah is going to give Rav Chisda the zinger. According to you, why would you say that the whole thing is prohibited? Where did the permitted bulb go to? Did it just walk away? So here is the same thing. It doesn't walk away, right? It does walk away. So they have the original bulb, which is from the 6th year, and that is permitted. And now I put it on the ground. It grows more. If it's new leaves from the Sheviit year, then the whole thing becomes prohibited. And what happens to the original bulb? The permission? Yeah, it's nullified. The permitted part is nullified, and now the whole thing becomes prohibited. Now, that's exactly what I said regarding these onions that I took to the maaser, and they're permitted. I replanted them, and they grew more, so now they go back to being tebel. So yes, Rabbah says it goes back to the original status of prohibition. That's what I think. But Rav Chisda has a comeback. Rav Chisda says, you misunderstood this Mishnah. Regarding the Sheviit, did you think that when it says asurin, it goes on the original bulb? No, only the new leaves are going to be prohibited, but the original remains permitted. And so therefore, yeah, the permitted part remains. It doesn't walk away. Hold on. We're going to challenge Rav Chisda and defend Rabbah. If so, look at the continuation of that source where you have Rashbag. And what would he be saying? The Tanya. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, Hagadel b'chiyuv chayav, Hagadel b'ftur patur. Tanakama name hachi amar. Rashbag says that which grows in a prohibited time, during the Sheviit, would be prohibited, and that which grows during the permitted time would be permitted. In other words, you separate the old leaves, the old bulb, which is from 6th year, and that's permitted, from the new one that grew in the 7th year, and that's prohibited. So you see that it doesn't, in the shechorin, these new leaves, they don't make the entire thing prohibited. Only the new is prohibited. Now that is the opinion of Rashbag, but that is in contrast to Tanakama. And according to you, Rav Chisda, Tanakama is saying the same thing. That doesn't make sense. That Tanakama and would say you separate, only the new stuff is old, and then Rashbag would say the same thing. It sounds like there's a machloket. No, we could answer for Rav Chisda. Kula matnitin, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel katanila. Maybe in fact the whole Mishnah is Rashbag, and the beginning is just telling you the basic law that if it's dark, then you know that's new growth. And then Rashbag explains himself that we're only talking about the new growth is prohibited, but the old growth remains permitted. All right, so fine, we can explain that source according to Rav Chisda. But now we're going to answer the question for Rabbah. Even if you read it that way, it's still okay. But there's a difference between the two cases. In the case of that baraita of Rashbag, where he says that the 6-year stuff remains permitted, and only the new one becomes prohibited. That's because he didn't exert himself to do any work. There, he took the bulbs and just put them on the ground for storage. His intention was not to replant them to grow. So because he did not have intention for that, he wanted those original bulbs. And so the original bulbs, which were permitted from the 6th year, remain permitted. A new growth that he didn't intend for, well, that is during Sheviit, and that will have Kedushat Sheviit. However, but if he purposely exerted himself and replanted it so that it'll grow, in that case, it's neutralized. In that case, it's batel. And that's why in the original statement that Rabbah was quoting in the name of his teacher, Rabbi Yohanan, where I take kosher onions I already took to the maaser and I replant them by exerting myself and replanting them, I show I don't care about these anymore, the original. I care about the new growth. Therefore, the new growth nullifies the old, and I have to take to the maaser on the whole thing. All right, very good answer. Question: Now, is this rule true across the board, that anytime I exert myself and I replant them, then the new nullifies the old? והרי ליטרה מעשר תבל וקטרח וקטנה, ואותה ליטרה מעשר עליו ממקום אחר לפי חשבון. We already saw this baraita at the end of the previous daf. Here we have maaser tevel, which means I took maaser rishon from some produce. I have the maaser, but I didn't take the terumah from that maaser. This belongs to the Levi. I didn't take the terumah from it, so it's still not kosher. It still needs something to be done to it. This maaser, and that's why it's still called tevel. It is itself maaser, but I didn't take terumah. And now I go, instead of giving it to a Levi, instead of taking the terumat maaser and then giving it to a Levi and the Kohen, instead I take this entire thing, and I, the farmer, go and exert myself and replant it so that I can grow these bulbs of onions so that I can grow more. And what's the law? Litra, that original, I have to still take terumat maaser from it, from a different place, because it's all mixed up now, even though it grew more. So even though if it grows much more, the new growth is permitted, because we're talking about a case where it was planted during a Sheviit year, and therefore, or planted before, but new growth during the Sheviit year is exempt from terumah because it's all out in the open, and therefore it's hefker. Hefker, everybody can share, so you don't have to take maaser on something that everyone can share. Let the Levi come and take it himself. So the new growth is exempt from maaser and terumah, but the old growth that was there originally doesn't get nullified by the new growth. It remains in its original state, and I still have to take the terumat maaser from it. So what's going on here? Even though here I exerted myself and replanted it, nevertheless, it does not get nullified by the new growth. And the answer is Shane gabe maaser da'amar kera aser te'aser ve'tera zara'i nashe isura la zara'i nashe. Okay, so regarding maaser, that's a different case. That's a different story, because it says a double language. You shall surely give a tenth. And we learn from that when you are replanting something, you should take a tenth take the maaser first, and then take permitted seeds and onions and plant those. That's the right thing to do. Whereas something that's prohibited, to take the seeds that are themselves maaser and therefore prohibited to me, and go replant that, the rabbis did not want people doing that. I'm supposed to give that to the Levi, give it to the Kohen, and not just use it to replant it. And that's why the rabbi said, what'd you do? You replanted it? You think you got away not giving it? No, you still have to give the terumat maaser from that, and you don't get out of it. But that's a special law regarding maaser. In any other case, like something that was originally grew in the 6th, but now replanted in the 7th, and then if I did it on purpose, then yes, the new will undo the status of the old. So the rule stands. Okay, last challenge is going to be to Rabbi Yannai, who was the first one that was quoted to begin with. So Gufa Amar Bichenat Tirta'a Amar Rabbi Yannai Basal Shel Terumah Sheneta'o Verabu Gidulav Alikaro Mutar. I have an onion that's Terumah, and I planted this terumah onion that now it grew, and it grew a lot more than the original. The new growth is permitted. Okay, and maybe even the original is permitted, right? That's why we brought it to begin with as a proof that even the original is permitted. Okay, so we have a question. Oh wait, does that mean that new permitted growth will nullify the original prohibited terumah? Hold on, we have a Mishnah against this Gidule Terumah. Mishnah teaches that growths of terumah are still considered terumah and prohibited. How could you say the whole thing is permitted? Here the Mishnah says it's no good. And the answer is Begidule Gidulin Kamrinan. This statement of Rabbi Yannai, right, the name of Rabbi Yannai is who that permits is not talking about the growth of terumah, but rather only the growth of terumah. If I have terumah onion, I plant it. What it grows from there is prohibited. If I take from that and then we replant it again, the growth of the growth, that's what's permitted. And in fact, we have a baraita that says so. Gidulin holin. And so now we actually question the opposite way. Wait, we already know this. We already taught. Isn't this obvious? Why did B'Yanai have to tell it to us if the Mishnah already says so? Hakamashmalan afilu bedavar she'en zar'o kaleh. Or Rabbi Yannai is teaching me that even if it's something that's not like a seed that gets decayed and it'll be permitted, no, even if it's something like an onion that the original remains, even so, the growth of a growth is permitted. But that's what Rabbi Yannai had to teach us. But if it's just the first growth, then it'll be prohibited. V'atenan hatebel gidulav mutarin. Hold on, we learned in a Mishnah that tebel, that's so it's prohibited. What grows from it is permitted if it's a seed that decays. Now, why is the growth permitted? We're talking about the following case. I had produce and I harvested it and stored it. Right? Something is I'm only responsible. I only have to take to the maaser once it's stored and it's finished processing. Then it's called tebel. Okay, so I have tebel that is required. I have to take to the maaser, and I take some of it and replant it. Now, and it grows. Now that is still out in the field. So because it's still on the field, it grows, it's permitted because I'm allowed to snack from it without taking to the maaser. So even though what I planted was already from the pile, I was liable to take to the maaser. Now that I replanted and it grew, what grew is permitted. But that's only if it's talking about a seed that the seed decays. But if it's something like an onion where the original does not decay, then even the growths of growths are prohibited. And so now we have a challenge another challenge to the B'Yanai, because he said that growths of growths are permitted. In fact, the Mishnah also said that. But here we have a different Mishnah that says the growths of growths are prohibited regarding tebel. And the answer is Ribuya de Rabu Gidulin Alikaro Mutar Kamashmalan. Rabbi Ami is teaching us that the growths of growths are only permitted if they exceed the original part of it, right? You do need that concept of bitul. The new has to be more than the old in order for it to be permitted. Whereas this Mishnah here is talking about where it just grew a little bit. You have the growth of the growth is only a little bit less than the growth before it. Well, then it remains remains prohibited, similar to the laws of bitul. Hazran alacha noder min hayarak.